Welcome to China Tech Talk, the almost weekly discussion of technology and startups here in China. I am John Artman, editor-in-chief of technode.com, joined as always by Matthew Brennan, founder of China Channel. So last week we covered quite a lot, actually, all the way from tensions between China and the U.S. And how that's affecting technology, artificial intelligence, ByteDance, crypto, and bike rentals, and the imminent or already happening collapse of that whole rental economy. And so this episode, where we have 5 more topics that we'll be looking at. Just a review and kind of also a bit of predictions as well. And so I think that this year has been super interesting. I mean, obviously for a lot of different reasons, but one of the big ones is what's happened with Tencent, and in particular with gaming regulations. So Tencent, I mean, their stock hasn't been doing so well this year. Part of it is, of course, again, the overall situation of a bear market. But then also, they haven't since March, they haven't been able to add any monetization options into any of their games, that are actually being played here in China, because the government won't give them the approval for it.
Yeah. So the dynamics here is that the share price for Tencent during 2017 more than doubled. It was going very, very well, and then pretty much as soon as we entered 2018, it started collapsing. And yeah, the big reason for that is gaming. Yeah, it's gaming regulation, without a doubt. That's by far the biggest reason. So you're totally right, John. Monetization is the issue. They've just suspended these gaming these monetization licenses, and Tencent's in a situation where they can't monetize their most popular games, and so they're sitting on these titles. The PUBG mobile titles in mainland China are currently the hottest, still as of recording this, the hottest games with the most interest and the most potential for monetization, and they're making absolutely nothing from them. So and they've actually had to pay licensing fees for those from Bluehole, which is a South Korean company. It's a terrible situation for them, and it seems very opaque. We don't get any answers clearly from the government or from Tencent higher management as to when this situation will be resolved. I'm confident it will be resolved, but actually at some point next year. So getting a prediction out there early in the episode rather. My prediction for 2019 is that this will be resolved at some point. That we'll see that the monetization licenses will begin to be issued again, and that the situation will return to semi-normal or normal before this whole thing blew up. But we are likely to see that there will be more restrictions on gaming for minors. It's clear that the real reason why this has happened is because there is a misalignment of incentives between the government and the gaming industry in China, where the Chinese government in general does not view this as a valuable industry for society, that young people are becoming addicted to games, that this is not productive use of time, and they are kind of throwing their weight around, as it were, to let the industry know that they're in charge, and they need to self-regulate more, that they need to be more serious about the negative effects to society and to the youth of what they're doing with creating these really addictive games.
Yeah, and this is what's always really interesting about the regulatory environment in China. We talked with Kaiser Kuo about this in 2017, I believe. My sense of time is kind of messed up. But at the time, the People's Daily was really laying into Honor of Kings, and Honor of Kings was a cash cow for Tencent. So a really well designed game and very very popular, which they've since also tried to export. I think to middling success, certainly not as successful as it's been here in China. But there's the regulatory environment in China is such that the Communist Party and the government apparatus they feel like they have a moral obligation to protect the youth, let's call it, to make sure. I mean, like in China, there's been a perceived problem around gaming addiction and internet addiction for many years. While psychologists and scientists outside of China, they wouldn't call from their perspective, it's not part of the DSM. There is no such clinical thing as internet addiction or gaming addiction. However, in China, this has become a bit of a problem where kids will become alienated from their families, and they will spend hours, if not days, at these internet cafes playing games. And now, of course, that's on mobile as well. And so when it comes to the government, they feel like they have a moral responsibility to come in and regulate these things because they need to make sure that kids are, basically doing their homework instead of playing these games. Now, what's really kind of funny is some of the excuses they've used for this. And so one of the most recent ones was, this national campaign against myopia. And again, this is where Chinese science is kind of different from science in the rest of the world. So if you look at research into myopia outside of China, it's very, very clear that if you spend more time indoors, you're going to you're more likely to develop nearsightedness. And so in China, of course, in a lot of Asian countries, East Asian countries in particular, you have high rates of myopia, so non-genetic nearsightedness, and so nearsightedness that is actually developed over time. And a lot of it is because these kids are spending so much time inside. They're either in school or they're at home doing their homework, or in China in particular, they are in a class in some kind of structured time that their parents paid for, whether it's piano or dance or taekwondo or whatever. And a lot of part of it's about enrichment, but also a lot of it's about staying competitive and making sure that when it's time, they can get into a good high school, they can get into a good university, and so on and so on. So, and Tencent has been part of this anti-myopia campaign. And the way that they've dealt with it is by imposing time limits on their games. And this is what's kind of Orwellian about it all, is that the way that they've implemented that is through facial recognition. And the facial recognition is tied to databases controlled by the Public Security Bureau, basically the police here in China. And so what they've done in order to do this is quite fascinating. But of course, it's going to have a huge impact on their bottom line. The DAUs are going to, if they haven't already, they're going to plummet. And I do have to wonder, what their plan is for games. Certainly with their recent announcement, well, I say recent, but it was in October, about their restructuring. They're obviously they recognize that these gaming regulations are a huge threat to their business, and they are trying to pivot. But what do you think? Matt, what do you think they're going to do with their gaming unit?
Like I said, I don't think it's that as bad as you're making out. The gaming, the actual numbers, the DAU, MAU numbers on their games, despite the fact they can't monetize them, they're as popular as ever, right? Like, there's actually Chinese young people are like playing games, and that's not going to change. And the quality of the games is going to keep improving. And Tencent's place relative to other companies in the gaming industry in China is not diminished in terms of market share. So it's a question of really, it's just a regulation issue. The actual dynamics of the industry, the fundamentals behind the industry are really strong. And then you look at things like esports as well, which has got a very bright future as well. And monetizing the IP of these games is going to become more and more lucrative over time. So and that leads into the whole sort of content pan-entertainment ecosystem, which Tencent also is pretty strong in. So it's not. I don't think it's as woeful as some people are making out. But the real question is, what kind of new regulation, if any, will come out in 2019, and actually from youths, from like teenagers, but the type of people that. When we're talking about myopia, for example, that government's really concerned, kids, according to the statements from Pony Ma and the higher management, they actually from kids, they really don't make that much money at all. It's kind of it's overblown, that the stereotype there. It's young adults and people who have more disposable income who would be actually be the whales, as it were, right? So in the gaming industry, it's all about getting the whales, who spend a lot of money in these games. There's virtually no like 10-year-old or 12-year-old, 14-year-old whales. They don't have the disposable income to spend that money all the time in order to get to spend that much time in the game. It's actually gaming is not it's something that if people in their 30s do, and it's people in their 40s would play these games as well. So it's actually an older age range than people think. But moving on to the restructuring point for Tencent, that's been coming a long time, and I think it's something that Alibaba's also moving in the same direction, and it's more about a general shift from consumer-facing internet into what Tencent's called industrial internet, and that is all about the next 10 years of this. The high growth in mobile is slowed down now, and it's mature and it's competitive, and there's less and less opportunities there, but with industries like healthcare, education, government services, these are still at a very early stage of digitalization, and with the application of cloud, big data, AI, and later on, hopefully, AR, VR, when that's ready, and blockchain and all these different technologies that are that are emerging. There's huge potential for this to revolutionize all these different vertical industries. So that's the opportunity that all the big players are looking at and thinking where the growth will lie in the next decade. And I think it's difficult to deny that will be the case. But it will be a slow. It won't be a sudden transition. It will be a slower transition. It's more a B2B industry rather than a consumer-facing one. So perhaps in the next few years of doing this podcast, for example, there will be a lot of change in that area, but it will be change that B2B change. It's less obvious to society that this change is happening because it's sort of behind closed doors, right? It's sort of industry change, supply chain change. It's not so sexy, it's not so interesting as something like I don't know what ByteDance is doing now with with Douyin, where you can actually use it and you can become it can actually change your life. You can suddenly change your consumption habits of content. So it's something that's easy to understand and can actually affect you directly. Whereas reorganizing a supply chain within retail industry, the only thing you might notice is that the product gets to you slightly faster and maybe it's slightly cheaper, right? But actually it's a huge change, right? So there's been a lot of technological change in the back, and maybe there's been a lot of automation of processes and jobs, which has led to great efficiency gains. And you see those videos of warehouses filled with robots, and it looks really cool. And you might hear the occasional story about how JD's got this completely automated warehouse, or Alibaba's doing this and that. But it doesn't touch our lives as directly, but it is a very important change, and it can be quite lucrative as well for these companies to move into those areas.
Yeah. There's a lot there. I think the big thing for me when it comes to Tencent's restructuring, I mean, my first reaction was, wow, this is a bit late to be restructuring in this way, or to be focusing on enterprise services as much as they are saying that they're going to do, and mostly because Alibaba's been in this space for quite some time already. And they've already really targeted the enterprise space, in particular with their cloud services, Aliyun, for example. And Tencent has their own cloud services as well. And so making restructuring to emphasize the cloud services isn't like they're kind of pulling it out of thin air. But I think that the real issue is that can they make up for lost time in this area? Is Alibaba too far ahead? And is Tencent's competency in? I mean, can they do enterprise? Because I think like Alibaba, if you think about it, they've been doing marketplace e-commerce, and so marketplace e-commerce means that they have to build tools for merchants, for people who run their small businesses, and so they already have this kind of competency. They even have their own messaging app, Ding Ding or Ding Talk, which is specifically targeting the enterprise messaging market. WeChat has WeChat for Work. I don't know anyone that actually uses it, so I haven't gotten any feedback. But I think, again, I mean, the biggest issue when it comes to restructuring is just does Tencent have the competency, and can they actually build up into that? I mean, Matt, what's going on with WeChat for Work? Do you know?
WeChat for Work is the number 2 player in the market. I think it is. It's doing okay. It's definitely got ground to make up on Ding Talk, but it's still early days for enterprise messaging, really. And I don't have numbers off the top of my head for it. I do have a number off the top of my head for cloud revenue. So in the last earnings call, Tencent let us know that this year they've earned 6 billion RMB from cloud services, and we can compare that directly with Alibaba Cloud, or Ali Cloud rather, which was 14.7. So they're about 40% of revenues for 2018 compared to Ali. So they are definitely behind, of course, but it's not as big a difference as people expected, at least in revenue. So which is a pretty good indicator, I think. So unsurprising that they've got ground to make up, but. It's cloud right now is important. It's a proven business model with B2B industrial internet. I think the restructuring just it's just a clear turning point, especially with everything that's happened with the share price as well, that it was a point to rally the troops around and say, okay, look, there's clearly this change and we are moving forward in a new direction, and with the gaming regulation as well, it's kind of all these things combined, and so it created a very nice narrative for media to get a hold of and for people to talk about and analyze. But this change has been clear for quite some time. Like if you look back on any kind of presentation that Polymar's given in the last year and a half, nearly all of it is industrial internet related. So, and when some quotes from their internal staff meetings that leaked over a year ago now, they were talking about restructuring then. They were saying, we need to do better at B2B. We need to change our company culture. So it's quite clear that, this has been a long time coming. It's well over a year that they've been planning this. It's just that publicly, the reorganization in terms of merging units is definitely a big deal, and it's something that I think is a good move. Like, it makes sense what they did, but it makes it seem like this is something that just popped up recently when that's really not the case.
Definitely. I mean, an announcement is just making it public. It's not saying, oh, we're just now doing this. And I think that would be quite silly, in fact. But kind of speaking of Tencent and Alibaba, of course, one of the bigger stories has to do with let's say companies in their ecosystem, in particular the Ele.me acquisition, as well as the Meituan IPO. And so Alibaba has gone all in on delivery, and not just that. They also Ele.me. So they bought the majority stake in Ele.me, and they also bought the majority stake in Baidu Waimai, which was Baidu's delivery platform, and they've since rebranded it as let me see if I can remember. It's called Ele.me Xingxuan, and so it's a play on words. Usually, Qingxuan means like premium, basically, and in this case, it's Xing, which means and I'm probably doing the tones wrong, so please leave me alone about that. Which is star, and so it's like supposed to be like the starry choice or whatever. So basically, Baidu Waimai has become the place where if you want like premium food delivery services from premium restaurants, that's where to do it. I haven't actually used the app yet, and now that I'm now that I'm talking about it, I'm kind of wondering why I haven't. Basically, it's just habit. But definitely, I mean, so where Ele.me has, I mean. So Alibaba's gone all in on delivery. They own most of the company, and so I think that the delivery space is really kind of interesting, because it's really now just Meituan and Ele.me, which is of course a proxy for Alibaba and Tencent.
Ele.me Xingquan, I think, is the one. I just looked it up. Yeah. Okay. So Xingquan. Yeah, you're right. It's become a duopoly now, right? It's the market's become fully consolidated into two players. Very interesting dynamic here. Meituan's just IPO'd. Done okay with the IPO. Share price has dropped since, but I think broadly, we can say it's a success. Took on Mobike, as we covered in the last episode, and Ele.me consolidated Baidu Waimai and also Koubei into Ali, and you're right, like Ali's like made it very clear that we need to win this market. I think they described it as local services as a must win for them, and so that's why I've been paying a bit more attention to Meituan recently. I think a combination of all these factors, and also it's very nice to sort of finally hear Wansing publicly give earnings calls and talk and have to field questions publicly about his company. So I have a lot of respect for Wansing. I think he's like a very one of the top entrepreneurs in China. Some things that came out, basically overall, Meituan Dianping is definitely leading this market in terms of market share quite considerably compared to Alibaba. Alibaba's burning a lot of money. From the summer, they've made it clear that they're gonna, they've made these announcements. This is a must-win market for us. They're subsidizing it 3 times. They're spending 3 times more on subsidies than Meituan Dianping is. Meituan Dianping seems to be keeping market share, but they're losing money. But according to them, their core food delivery business is close to profitable. The money is mostly being lost in other areas, one of which would be Mobike, right? Would be a big one. But also ride hailing that they moved into, and we did cover that on an episode a while back. The ride hailing with because Meituan Dianping moved into ride hailing suddenly and did take considerable market share in markets of Nanjing and I think Shanghai, but they've that's cooled off, and they're putting that on hold right now. So their ambitions to move into ride hailing seem to be on hold, and that's probably because they're really fighting right now. There is still an intense battle about food delivery in China, and if you're living in China, you can still get you can still get a lot of discounts. It's good for the consumer. There's a lot of coupons to be had, a lot of subsidies to be had with Ele.me and with Meituan Dianping still. And so the question really is long term, can either of these players really make a profit?
That is the question, and of course the cost of delivery, so literally just paying the delivery drivers has gone up, and this is true across the logistics industry. Costs are increasing, and so how the delivery companies actually end up dealing with this, I think, is going to be very interesting to watch. Already we see a lot of different solutions to that on the logistics side, at least, where the smart lockers. There are places. I mean, they're making it much easier for you just to go pick it up from a distribution center rather than having it delivered straight to your door. That's happened recently to me several times unexpectedly and quite annoyingly, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, looking at the delivery market, I mean, it's amazing just to see how far it actually has come. I remember first seeing Ele.me bikes back in, oh my gosh, 2013. Maybe 2014. I used to park my bike at Genway Soho, and for whatever reason, delivery drivers parked their bikes at Genway Soho, and there was this whole thing of, if you're hungry, call Ele.me. And I remember at the time being like, what the hell is this company? This is never going to work, and so on and so on. And of course, I was proven completely wrong. But I mean, the delivery market itself, I feel like it's still kind of. I mean, it's a lot more mature than it was in terms of user habits. It's become just normal for people to order food for delivery all the time. And as you said, I mean, it's providing a lot of value to the consumer. I mean, I remember before these delivery platforms really took off, I mean, you would have to rely on the store themselves delivering the food items. And then there were, in Beijing in particular, there were a few expat-focused delivery companies, Jinshisong and Sherpas, which are still around. But they weren't that reliable. They were a bit expensive, and half the time your food came cold. Whereas these days it's very normal, and it's extremely convenient. Both Ele.me and Meituan have an option. They both call it different things, but the option is basically you pay 10% of the or is it 1%? Let me think about this for a second. You pay 1% of the total bill size, the total amount, to make sure that it actually is delivered on time. And the way they do that is if it's over, I think it starts if it's over 15 minutes, then you're eligible to claim back up to half of the total order, the monetary value of the total order. If it's more than 30 minutes, it's like 75%. If it's more than 45, you're eligible to claim 100%. I use it all the time. I mean, because it's great. Just it's just that extra layer of insurance to make sure that the food is delivered when in a reasonable amount of time. Still, it can still take too long sometimes. But what's interesting is basically, I mean, it's a negative incentive for drivers, because if they deliver late, then it's coming out of their commission for the delivery. So I mean, again, on the one hand, it's great, but on the other hand, I mean, I think that the way that they manage the drivers and the incentive structures that they use could still definitely use some tweaking to make it more equitable, if that makes sense.
Sure. Yeah, it does make sense. The costs are going to be rising for those drivers for sure, but it's interesting that the points you made actually broadly support what Wang Xing was saying on their first earnings calls in regard to this core question of how can you make profit in a market where subsidies seem to be so prevalent and you're up against a player with deeper pockets than you. he said, well, broadly, for food delivery, people are not going to stop eating. And the user habit of delivering food has become ingrained. It's become a part of daily life, as you just mentioned, right? So actually, these two dynamics are very, very positive for the industry, in that they should be able to raise prices over time and still keep very, very high usage of their services. And they're also, Meituan has the most lucrative part of their business model is actually hotels and travel industry, which they basically leverage the traffic that they've built over food delivery into selling other services. And the big one is actually hotel bookings, where they've managed to become the largest hotel booking service in China, which is quite incredible to think of, considering that this area has been dominated by Ctrip, who we've had on the podcast before, and Qunar, which they've acquired, which we also had Fritz on the podcast before. So we've covered the travel industry quite a bit in the past year on China Tech Talk, and but the biggest player in hotel bookings has suddenly, in over the recent history, has become Meituan Dianping. So they it's not just food delivery for their business by any means. They really are a life services platform. And you can find all different kinds of local services on there. So it's beyond food chain. Another aspect is that they're moving deeper into the supply chain and actually offering services to restaurants. And so if you go to restaurants in China, you'll find that Meituan Dianping often is providing the software systems that those restaurants will be using for bookings and taking orders, or even for accepting mobile payments. The little machines that are used to scan the QR codes now in many restaurants are being provided directly by Meituan Dianping and Ele.me. And then they've got, later on, that they've got opportunity to move into sort of deeper into supply chain of providing the actual ingredients to the restaurants, and then using technologies like blockchain to track that supply chain, leveraging their big data which they have from the platform to predict what restaurants will need, etc., etc. There's all these optimizations and efficiencies that can be gained from the scale that they have, and then from the leverage that they have from owning the customer touch point. So they've, that's what they're talking about as the future for 2019. That's what they're looking at. And I think Alibaba would be quite similar in terms of, they're always about, leveraging data, personalization of the customer experience is what Alibaba is talking about these days, right? For them it's quite obvious. When you go into Alibaba apps, it's usually to make some kind of purchase, and so having the big data there and the AI to optimize that interface. Now when you go into Taobao, for example, they made a big deal out of it on their last earnings call for Alibaba, was how Taobao is completely personalized now, right? The front page that you and I see will be totally different between two consumers that buy different things. So that's how AI is kind of revolutionizing their industry, in that, for e-commerce marketplaces, it's got a big value add in terms of predicting what you're going to buy and pushing those products to you, which will have a big impact on the sort of marginal revenue that they can get from each consumer.
Yeah. I come at it much from a user perspective, because I use Meituan and Ele.me kind of on and off. I'm a bit agnostic, and I use them differently on purpose, because I don't want either of them to win. But honestly, Dianping, Dianping has been amazing as a consumer. It's absolutely amazing. It's not just delivery, as you said. It's also like booking a table. At Chinese restaurants, it used to be a huge pain in the ass. You call them. You say, do you have a table? They say, maybe, maybe not, and then this is whole back and forth, and so on and so on. Whereas on Dianping, you can just go to the restaurant listing in the app. If they take reservations, it'll show it right there, and then you can just make a reservation. Or if they don't take reservations, then you can get a number. So let's say it's a really popular place, you can actually get a number from Meituan or from Dianping before you even get there, and so you can kind of wait in a virtual line and then show up, when it's almost time for you to get a table. So yeah, I mean, I think that Dianping in particular has been amazing for consumers in China in a lot of different ways. But
yeah, that's a great point, John, actually. I want to just expand upon that. The lack of waiting. I find myself, when I'm in China, that I've really got a low tolerance for waiting now when it comes to these things. I think that's really been built up by this O2O revolution that's happened over the last couple of years, where if you're going to go from A to B, you're probably going to get a DD, and you can time that from your phone so that you don't need to wait. If you're going to book a restaurant, you'll do it through Meituan Dianping. And again, if you know what you're doing, you can time it so you can just arrive at the restaurant and go straight in. When we were talking to Walmart, from Ted from Walmart, just a few episodes ago from the TechCrunch conference, he was saying that the reason that Scan and Go became so popular is because Chinese consumers weren't willing to wait. That they just wanted to scan the products as they were going around the supermarket and check out immediately. And so I think this is a real value that mobile lifestyle has brought to China. It's a real efficiency in the economy that we see that
right.
Basically time is money, right? You forget this, but time is money, right? It really is. And so if you're saving time, you're saving money. And Chinese consumers don't want to wait now. They don't want to queue. They want to save time. And this is possible through the integration of online and offline. So it's a real value that, and it's actually becoming a difference between, well, at least for me, I don't know if I can truly speak for how much of this is true, but like I feel the difference when I'm in China to outside China.
Yeah, and this is just yet another reason that to never leave, right? But it's been great. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, like especially grocery stores. If you haven't been to a Chinese grocery store, well, for me at least, like I haven't been to one. I can't remember the last time that I actually went to like a real Chinese grocery store, like a Walmart or a Carrefour or something like that. I never go because it's a pain in the ass. It's like literally like a half day thing if you actually want to go to these hypermarkets and buy groceries. And so instead of doing that, I use Jingdong Daojia, and it's amazing for the very same reasons that we were talking about. But also, I mean, like waiting in line in China is awful, absolutely awful. In Chinese, they have a saying, people mountain, people see, and that's very true of most shopping experiences, in particular at grocery stores, but then also for like popular attractions, and in this case, specifically restaurants. I mean, like Haidi Lao, for example, always tons of people waiting. Toto, which is another really good hot pot place. Try it if you haven't yet. There's almost always a line, but with these small little things here and there, the overall experience is much better, and you have more time to spend money elsewhere. But speaking of delivery,
totally.
Sorry,
Yeah, that leads into our next one. We've actually been covering it quite a bit. I think these two overlap considerably, right? So number 3 we've got for today's episode of the themes of 2018. We thought we couldn't leave out Luckin Coffee. And Luckin Coffee really is a poster child for new retail, smart retail, boundless retail, whatever you want to call it. And it's certainly been one of the most attractive and interesting and explosive growth stories that we've seen in 2018. That's pretty hard to deny.
Yeah, and we've given quite a bit of airtime to Luckin, I think. Not as much as we've given to like Tencent or WeChat perhaps, but they've definitely come up in a few different episodes. I mean, we devoted a whole episode to them. And yeah, I mean, so this is what really kind of shows to me that the delivery space is mature. User habits are pretty ingrained. I mean, because it's a pure delivery company. It's like if anyone's familiar with Domino's, for example, in the States, Domino's only delivers. You there's no actual sit-in portion, it's similar to Papa John's as well. Papa John's only delivers. Whereas, of course, in China, they both offer sit-in. But Luckin is doing something very, very similar, where most of their business is only delivery. They've since they've begun to open up storefronts that actually do have sit-down options. But even then, like the sit-down area is pretty sparse, and it's pretty clear that they don't want you really hanging around, in direct opposition to the atmosphere that Starbucks is trying to create, and of course their main competitor. But what they've been able to do is, because user habits are so ingrained around delivery, around mobile payments, there already is, a delivery infrastructure that they can use to scale on top of. That they've been able to have this massive amount of growth. And it's always kind of funny because they tout. I mean, how many stores do they claim to have? I always forget. It's like some huge number. But the thing is,
for Luckin?
Yeah, for Luckin.
Yeah, so Luckin, I think is probably about 1,500 right now. Actually, no, God, we're in December already. It's probably about 1,800 by now. I mean, their goal is 2,000 by the end of the year, right? So, and they're opening roughly about 50 stores a week, 50 to 60.
Okay.
So, yeah, and then Starbucks has about 3,500.
Yeah, so point being is that, I mean, those numbers, I mean, again, as we mentioned in the episode, I mean, so like what they do is they have a few different types of stores. They have kind of like the pickup only places where you can place your order and then go and get the coffee. So no waiting in line or anything like that, similar to what we were just talking about. They have places where it's a bit more of a coffee shop like experience, but still not very much room to sit down and hang out. And then they have dark stores, which are basically just pure fulfillment, and where you order your coffee, and that's why, and that's where it's coming from. It could just be some random kind of kitchen in some building, and they're able to make the coffee and then have it delivered. And so, in the numbers themselves, I mean, it's China. We've talked about this, like with Ma Fengwo. The numbers you can't always trust. There's probably they've probably been massaged to a certain degree, or I wouldn't say outright lying, but that might happen sometimes too. Maybe not in the case of Luckin. I don't necessarily mean Luckin.
Sure. Well, looking forward to 2019, Luckin is going to keep, at some point it's going to overtake Starbucks, I would say. I mean, the two brands have different positioning. Starbucks is still premium. They've already taken up most of the really prime real estate in terms of spaces in shopping malls around China, but Luckin is also going to be pretty ubiquitous. It already is, and they're going to take up more and more prime spots. And I think that in terms of branding, they will move closer towards the mid ground and get closer towards Starbucks over time. And I think the question really is in the next year, will we see, is this just going to be coffee, or are we going to see other areas of retail or F&B suddenly explode a similar, take the Luckin model and apply it to some other area? That would be really interesting to see. Yeah. Or is it just coffee?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I mean, you already have companies that are for cakes, for example, 21 Cake. It's a pure delivery company, but I think the difference is that they're not like trying to be a tech company also. I mean, it's why are we talking about Luckin specifically is because their background, their executives' backgrounds are tech, and they do kind of build themselves or try to place themselves as a tech company. 21 Cake, for example, I mean they're just a cake company that delivers. So I mean there's definitely a lot of room for it. The big question is, I mean, like, what product could actually do that? What customer segment is being underserved by the current delivery space? And I think that that's one of the big reasons why Luckin has been able to do what it's been able to do, and why coffee was such a smart play, because people were being completely underserved by the coffee delivery space before that. I mean, basically, there was no coffee delivery. I mean, like Starbucks never did delivery until Luckin came onto the scene. So before that there was nothing, and now we have Luckin, and if you want coffee delivered, it's you get it within 30 minutes, and it's not the best coffee, but at the same time, what you're paying for is convenience, not for amazing Italian espresso. So I think that the real question is just going to be like what market segment is being underserved currently that could be better served with delivery. I mean, I like cake. Hot dogs would be great, but I'm just kind of hungry right now.
We'll have to wait and see.
All right. I don't know how to transition to the mini programs.
Yeah. Maybe, yeah, okay. We don't need to transition that smoothly into each one, right? We just go for it. So number 4 on our list to cover, and I think this will be a brief one, but we have to mention it, is the theme of mini programs, which have, for 2018... I think been quite successful. Certainly, there's just been at the beginning of the year, if we go back to like January, there was I think it was actually launched in late December, but certainly in January time, we were talking about mini games. There was the whole phenomenon of Jump, which came out, and this like mini game which was embedded within WeChat became a national phenomenon, and people were playing it. Hundreds of millions of people were playing this game. That quickly subsided, but I think the more of the legacy of that was it just introduced the general populace to the concept of mini program, and people became a lot more familiar with what mini programs were, and why they would add value, and how to actually use them within WeChat. And of course, that was also linked into the drop-down menu. So within WeChat, on the sort of homepage, the inbox, there's a pull-down menu where almost every other app globally that's in the social space has integrated some form of stories, which was originally pioneered by Snapchat, right? But if you go into use something like Instagram today, you'll see stories at the top of there, these circle pucks, and you go in, and then it will give you like brief glimpses of your friend's daily activity. But WeChat kind of took that basic user interface and then said, okay, well, instead of that, we'll just make them apps. We'll use this as an entry point for mini programs, and it's been quite successful. I think that's one of the most intuitive ways to use them, and how it's driven a lot of traffic in a sort of very in a way that in terms of user experience works quite well. So mini programs have gone from strength to strength this year, and certainly if you look at the statistics on it, the traffic has grown incredibly, and I think it's no exaggeration to say that most people within China are now using mini programs if not on a daily basis, then certainly on a weekly or monthly basis.
Yeah, I mean, mini programs have been great. I think that it's. Again, Dianping, for example, is probably the one that I use more often. But then also, when I was in Shenzhen, I was using the public transportation mini app, which was amazing. Basically, you sign in with your WeChat credentials, and now when I go to Shenzhen, I don't need a public transportation card. I don't need to like go and make a deposit, get the card, and then make sure that there's always money on it and stuff like that. Instead, you just go to the till, go to the gated area of the subway, or when you're getting on the bus, open the mini program and have it scanned just right there, and the money will be deducted from your WeChat Pay. Wham bam, thank you ma'am, easy peasy. It was so cool to actually see that. I think that Beijing and Shanghai are trying to implement similar things. I don't take public transportation very much, so I haven't had a chance to actually look at it. But in general, I mean, like, at TechNode, we have our own mini program now, which is basically just a mirror of our website, and it makes it a lot easier for people to consume our content within WeChat. And so rather than tapping on a URL and then waiting for the in-app browser to open that, you tap on the mini program and it's just right there. There's our article. And so yeah, I mean, mini programs, I think that when they first launched, it was like, okay, what are they trying to do with this? I think a lot of it, especially for me, was just not understanding what was kind of the purpose of it. But now it's really kind of made WeChat, more extensible. And so there's a lot more things that you can do inside of WeChat that you were not able to do otherwise. And it also extends, I think, other applications. Again, like Dianping is a really good example where you can kind of go back and forth between the app on your phone in Dianping and the app and the mini app or mini program inside of WeChat. And so the handoff between WeChat and Dianping is a lot smoother, and like basically you're still kind of staying with the information that's most relevant to you.
Yeah. So exactly, people is really adding value to people's lives, and the original concept that there needed to be something that wasn't a web page and wasn't an app, but had the benefits of both. That original vision has really become reality now. It's a difference between China and the rest of the world. We see more and more activity in mini programs now, and obviously mini programs outside of China, they don't exist. So it's yet another way that the ecosystem's differentiated from the global norms. But in a good way, it really is adding value to people's lives. Going back to the Walmart conversation we had with Ted a couple of episodes ago, it's a great case study with Scan and Go. I mean, it really to have that rolled out to stores and immediately almost 1/3 or over 1/3 of their customers using that within a relatively short period of time, when this project had failed. Basically, it's been already sunsetted in the States, right, is what he was saying, because in the States, well, certainly consumers are different, but also one of the big factors is you have to do this for an app. You have to do an app download in order for it to work. So that straight away, that's really not, in my mind, that just sort of kills the whole concept. Nobody bothered to do that. Whereas in China, this mini program thing makes a lot more sense. It's just an app that you don't need to download. It's super fast. It's intuitive. Really, you only have to look at Walmart to know like why this is working and what's the real value.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, like I guess part of it is the success of it, but like I don't even see mini programs like as an app. Like it doesn't. The experience is so seamless that it's just another part of WeChat. You really don't have to do anything. I think the only issue is like discoverability. So, for example, with the Shenzhen transportation mini program, I had to actually have someone send it to me, and so that I think the discoverability can be a bit difficult, and especially for like us, we have our own mini program, and how do we make sure that people actually are aware of it, and so on. And part of it is just you got to keep pushing it to people. But other than that, I mean, like it's just all that it's really doing is just again extending what WeChat can actually do, which is exactly what apps did on the iPhone and on Android. So I mean, the metaphor is exactly the same, I would say.
Well, looking forward to 2019 for predictions for next year. The big question is we've got it's not just WeChat now, right? It's Alipay, it's ByteDance, it's Baidu, it's all of the handset manufacturers. Everyone's piled into this. Everyone's on board now. Everybody understands it. Consumers understand it. It's got traction. And so the question question is, what do the other players do? Can they clone this? Can they clone? Well, of course they can. They are cloning it, but can they clone it successfully? Can we see this expand out into other ecosystems? Baidu, Alibaba, ByteDance being the big ones, but. Yeah, and so they've all announced their own versions, and it's still very early days for all of them. I mean, WeChat literally took 2 years to build this ecosystem, and they're WeChat, right? They're the big guys, they're the big players in the market, where everyone's spending, opening this app 40 times a day or whatever. For even a strong company like Baidu, it's a much more difficult situation. Also, you have to remember that WeChat had official accounts since 2013, so you can look at mini programs as an upgrade of official accounts, and in which case they're just amplifying that behavior that was already there, in which case it's doubly difficult for these other players to actually move into this, because they don't have that already sort of latent ecosystem to build upon.
Yeah, and it's the same. It's the same thing with
that's the question,
and it's the same thing with Alibaba as well. I mean, like they've tried to do mini programs inside of Alipay, and I think they're not a failure, but they're certainly not as used as much as WeChat, just because Alipay is a tool, whereas WeChat is a destination. If we can put it that way, because people are in and out of WeChat for a extreme variety of reasons every single day. I mean, WeChat has like the highest open rate of any app in China. And whereas Alipay just does not, because you're only going to use it when you need to pay for something, and so they've done a really good job of just of nailing down this market, but of course they still do have some vulnerability, I think, which kind of dovetails into the last topic that we wanted to discuss for this final part of 2018 in review, which is Bullet Messenger. And I think that at the time of this recording, Bullet Messenger is not doing so well. But when it was first released, and neither is Smartisan for that matter. But when it was released, there was a lot of hubbub. There was a lot of noise being made about it. It seemed like it got like so much traction, days after it was released, and it's really died down. No one's really talking about it anymore. I mean, do you even use Bullet Messenger anymore, Matt?
No, I mean, after, you can go back and listen to our episode, right? So after what happened, I deleted it and I didn't log in anymore.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
But, it's more about the theme of Smartisan is an interesting one, right? So they're not doing so well, right? And it seems they could be in a lot of trouble. But it's more about the theme of how the smaller players, I think we do see a lot of smaller players come up in the app economy in China, but it's very difficult for people to really break out. I think that it's becoming more and more difficult to acquire users, that user acquisition costs are continually rising, and that mobile's saturated. And so this leads into, back into the theme we started off with about the restructuring for Tencent and why are they doing this? This is all linked together. They're doing this because mobile is really mature and there's less and less growth, and it's more and more difficult to actually have an impact because people have all the holes in the ecosystem have been filled, and trying to break in and take on these incumbents is really, really difficult.
Yeah, but also, to me, it showed a vulnerability in WeChat in the sense that people like new things, and that's one of the big attractions in the beginning was Bullet Messenger was a new experience, and so if you've been if you've been using the same app day in, day out, I mean, yeah, sure, you rely on it. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's where your most important conversations happen. Yeah, sure, that's where you get a lot of information. But at the same time, this is kind of it's Marshall McLuhan's statement. The medium is the message. I think is kind of appropriate here in the sense that the technology. The way that the technology is designed is going to define or limit, if you will, how it is actually experienced. And which is why, of course, user experience is so popular. But it's also going to, limit the types of things that you can do. By its very design, you will be encouraged and more likely to do one thing and discouraged and or completely blocked from doing another thing. And so people are going to they're going to want new experiences. And so for WeChat, Bullet Messenger was not a viable competitor over the long run. But the amount of traction that it did get, I mean, if I was a product manager at WeChat, I would have been very concerned. And so the issue, I think, for them is really, yes, it is a difficult market to break into, but what if someone does try again? What are they doing to make sure that even if there's a viable competitor, that they're still going to maintain most of their users? And of course, I mean the obvious answer is of course that they are a destination app and you can do so much in it. It's basically an operating system. But I mean, could another company do that? Maybe not. But at the same time, what if people decide to do most of their messaging on a different app? That could be very difficult for WeChat, obviously.
Sure. Well, I think it's time to wrap this one up, John. I think we've covered over the 2 episodes. We covered 10 themes, and we've kind of looked at predictions for next year for most of them, if not all of them. And anything you want to add at the end here, predictions wise? I think we want to look forward to 2019 really now and see, where are things going to go.
Yeah, I mean, so the biggest one, I think, is the markets. We already mentioned it in the previous episode, but the ByteDance IPO, from what I can tell, it's definitely going to happen in 2019. It's hard to say where they are in the application process. So it takes 6 months or more to get IPOs and the actual filing for an IPO ready. So I have no information about where they are with that process. But I mean, they're probably going to wait until, or it would be smart for them to wait until the market is a little bit less bearish. There's still companies IPOing these days, but it's more because if they don't do it now, then they might not do it in recent times. Also, as Shai mentioned in that episode, companies, they need to make sure that they're not IPOing in the valley, and so that's really the big question, I think, for ByteDance and also for Ant Financial, is where and when are they going to IPO?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think given their ambitions, they have to IPO. Right, so if they want to take things to the next level and really be a part of the BAT, they have to IPO. So it's just a matter of when.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're totally right. I couldn't predict whether it's going to be Hong Kong or whether it's going to be NASDAQ or whatever or New York, because again, back to political stuff, it's up in the air right now. It really is. And then we have what else do we have? Predictions. I've got down here. Luckin will overtake Starbucks in store numbers. Well, I think that's pretty clear. Will they? I think it would take a lot. 2020 perhaps before, at least in China, they start to become similar in terms of comparable in terms of revenue and things like that. But it's that trend's going to play out, and I guess the real question is, as we said, is it going to be more than coffee? Will we see other players copy that model? Very hard to predict. I don't know.
So yeah, I think Matt, we're going to end there. As it was with last year's reviews, there's a lot to talk about. And I think that both of us are a bit surprised by how much material we've been able to produce for these 2 episodes. But it just goes to show just how much has happened over this year. and also how much is going to keep happening in 2019. And honestly, this is what I love about what I do is really just kind of watching as this all unfolds, and taking an active interest in our world. And our world is, of course, China, and technology is a bigger and bigger part of that.
Yeah, definitely. 2019 is going to be and as a final note, it's a theme for 2018 has just been definitely a significant uptick in interest about Chinese technology globally, which is great to see, and I expect that to continue through to 2019. We're in a nice space. This is definitely an expanding area of interest to more and more people around the world.
And that's about all the time we have for this episode of China Tech Talk. As always, thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a review on iTunes, or you can go to Overcast or Pocket Cast and tap on that star button, and it will recommend this episode to your network. Also, we are on Himalaya and Spotify, so you can find us there if you haven't already. And also a quick reminder, TechNode, we do several newsletters every single day, including a curated summary of technology news in China, including some of the stuff from us, and a thrice weekly newsletter looking at significant fundings over the last couple of days. You can go to technode.com/newsletters to subscribe.